It's the B-Ball Breakdown with Coach Nick on SB Nation Radio.
And online at SBNationLive.com.
Coming to you live from the O'Reilly Auto Parts Studios, here's Coach Nick.
Hey, sports fans. It is Coach Nick here, and this is the B-Ball Breakdown. So happy to have you with us on SB Nation Radio on this lovely Tuesday evening. Hopefully it is warm in your area. If it's not, I'm sure it will be soon. It certainly is nice over here in LA. And we have a lot to talk about this evening, about the NBA playoffs. It's finally upon us. We've been talking about it for weeks and anxiously anticipating what was going to happen, and we finally have some data to look at. I've been breaking down 2 videos a day since Sunday, and man, is my mind mush at this point. So we've done plenty of stuff. We've already looked at a couple of the games with the Warriors. We did one video on the Warriors. We did a video on the Blazers and how Anthony Davis just MVP'd all over the Trailblazers in an exciting game for him. And this is his chance to finally prove to me that he is an MVP caliber player. I haven't been quite sold on him yet, but he looked really good in game 1 and pretty much helped them decide that game. We covered the Ben Simmons explosion in game 1, and then we had a Dwayne Wade resurrection in game 2. So we've actually had 2 breakdowns on that one series alone, and then we squeezed in a Pacers drubbing of the Cavaliers. Now I know it got a little bit close toward the end, but that opening first quarter, gave them a 20 or a 22-point lead that the Cavaliers could never overcome. And so there is concern in the Cavaliers land that not only could this be a first-round exit for LeBron because it just didn't look good, but then that might be it for LeBron. He might get a wandering eye and want to leave, which would be even more traumatic for Cleveland again, having lost him once, and they might leave him again. But maybe they won't feel so bad because he's already won them 1 championship and got them to 4 straight finals. And while we've seen the Warriors struggle with that notion of the disease of more, where it's just harder and harder every year to get back there, but they've won a couple of them, the Cavaliers are in the same boat. And even though they have a very small group of players who have actually done it, I think they got down to 4 now who are coming back from last year's success. It's still a thing, and LeBron is still going to have to really have a Herculean task ahead of him to overcome what the Pacers are throwing at him. So stay tuned. Lots of great stuff coming up. I got 2 or 3 other fantastic guests to come on and join me. So don't go anywhere after these messages from our sponsors. And this is the B-Ball Breakdown.
It's the B-Ball Breakdown with Coach Nick on SB Nation Radio. Coming to you live from the O'Reilly Auto Parts Studios, here's Coach Nick.
Welcome back, sports fans. As always, I am Coach Nick, and I cannot thank you for being here at the B-Ball Breakdown every Tuesday at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern. And I'm really excited to get into some playoff analysis because we hadn't started last week with the playoffs, and let's really focus on what's happening in these different series. We're going to have a number of guests on to discuss it and break it down. And our first guest today is friend of the breakdown, Eli Horowitz, who is a Caltech assistant coach and covers the WNBA and has been watching some of the playoffs pretty intently. So, Eli, thanks for joining us. Let's talk some Spurs Warriors. What do you say?
Absolutely. Thanks for me, Coach Nick.
You got it. So, there's a lot of stuff going on in this thing. It's now 2-0. The Warriors have a pretty commanding lead, but what are your thoughts so far and what Pop has been doing to combat the star power in Golden State?
Well, it was interesting. After the game last night, Pop said he thought they played well, and I feel like he almost was kind of throwing up his hands because, they tried everything. But, one thing I did notice was they really played Danny Green only 25 minutes, and they were winning at halftime. But in the second half, Klay Thompson just went off, and you had Bryn Forbes and a lot of smaller guards kind of trying to chase him over screens, off of downs, and he seemed to just kind of get whatever he wanted. So I was a little surprised to see that. I don't know what your thoughts were on that.
For sure. I mean, obviously, without Steph Curry, a lot of the pressure goes to Kevin Durant and Klay Thompson, and it's a little clunky. I mean, their offense isn't really functioning very perfectly, I would say, for them. So, the question then becomes: Klay obviously got into big head mode, so I don't know if it matters if Danny Green would have been on it. But you have a very good point because Forbes is clearly too small to really have much of an effect.
Absolutely, and then Iguodala was 4 for 5 from 3. Draymond Green hit an open 3 late in the game. So, when those guys are making threes, like you said, I don't know if there's anything they do or how much of a difference Danny Green would have really made.
Right. I think it was a great game plan, I think, by Pop to try and get Draymond to shoot as much from the outside as they could get him. And they were really doing it. You saw a lot of his man helping one pass away and just sort of inviting them to throw it to him. And he was even sort of waiting for a second before he decided to shoot it. Now that's the death of a jump shot anyway. So I thought that was really helpful to keep the wrong people shooting on the Warriors from the Spurs perspective. But it does feel like they kind of are throwing in the towel at this point, because even after the first game when Pop was joking that he'd have Danny Green grow 4 inches and tell KD to not be as good, it just seems like there's not a lot of options for them.
Absolutely. And the bottom line is, like you said, they did have a good game plan. I think they limited the Warriors to, I believe it was 19 around the rim, but they only got 22 themselves. And so other than Aldridge post-ups, they really don't have anyone who can consistently blow by a Warriors defender. Manu Ginobili still somehow is able to do so a bit, but if you're kind of relying on him as the only one to get middle penetration, to either get a basket in the paint or kick it out for a 3, I think you're in trouble.
I agree. And so I think this will probably end up being a sweep or maybe a gentleman's sweep for the Warriors, which is probably good for them because they'll get an extra couple days for Steph to recover. Although the prognosis didn't sound great. It sounds like he's still at least 3 weeks away as of yesterday. So we'll have to keep our eye on how that plays out in San Antonio. But let's move over to the Timberwolves-Rockets series because there's a lot of people with their arms up in the air and frustrated, I think, about what's going on with the Minnesota side, at least. What are your thoughts so far on how that series is playing?
It was interesting because, you saw on Twitter a lot of people up in arms about the lack of touches Karl-Anthony Towns was getting. And then even the Chris Webber on the broadcast and the TNT crew were kind of up in arms because the Rockets switch everything. And they felt like, the Wolves need to throw the ball into Towns and even Gibson they were calling for. So it is a bit puzzling, especially I get the Rockets will live with Gibson posting up, but Towns getting 9 shots Sunday in a game they could have won. They were there the whole time. Is a bit puzzling. I don't know. Did you think they should really be kind of exploiting those mismatches on the switches more?
Well, it's funny that you asked that since I am working on a video on that as we speak. And part of the issue, I think, is that they're being really physical with Towns, and he is not handling it very well. He doesn't have a lot of strength in the lower body anyway, but they're pushing him around, and he's kind of just disconnecting. And it's really kind of frustrating to watch when you see that. I also think that, down the stretch, the last 7 minutes of the game when he went in for the fourth quarter, he got 1 shot. And that's an issue that has to do with, Jimmy Butler and with Andrew Wiggins. But I think the other problem they have is Jeff Teague. And I think that Jeff Teague is one of those guys that kind of sort of makes it seem like, oh, he's really good, he's really going to help. But in reality, I feel like he is simply a very average point guard that's not going to, I think he's the guy that ends up holding them back the most.
Yeah, and I noticed down the stretch, he did make a couple shots, but the ball was really in his hands. And you kind of wonder, almost question, who are they running plays? Who's supposed to have the ball in these moments? Because, like you said, it's Jimmy Butler, it's Teagues, but somehow it's not Towns. And then Wiggins tries to make plays, and it's really very little off-ball movement. And then when they go to the bench, it's almost more the same problem when you have Jamal Crawford and Derrick Rose really doing a lot of hero ball, a lot of ISO ball.
Absolutely. It's a weird offense, and you think that we've heard in the past how, Thibodeau is really focused on the defense, and so the offense gets a back seat, which is weird. It's definitely a flip of what normally happens at the NBA level. I got to take a really deep dive and look at what they're doing offensively, but yeah, there's something about a really good point guard comes down, gets into a set, makes sure that they get the right shots for the right players. It shouldn't happen where Karl-Anthony Towns gets one attempt down low. Now, part of it is that he's just sort of shying away from contact and doesn't want to command the presence. And there certainly was plenty of evidence in the beginning of the game where they were trying to set a pick and roll, get a switch, and then back him down, and they wouldn't find him, or they throw it to him late. So it's an issue that I think could be solved with a little bit of film work and a practice or two or a shoot around. So I would expect that in game 2, the dude's going to get 20 shots, wouldn't you?
I would hope so, but it's a problem. I know people in Wolves Twitter and kind of calling out all season. So is Tibbs going to adjust? I mean, I guess we'll find out.
I would imagine that's one adjustment he can handle. Although, who knows? And I used to revere Thibodeau to the nth degree. And I mean, the thing that rubs me the most, I think, wrong with him is just sort of the style and the constant bellowing and yelling and disgust on his face and the frustration. I just think it wears on the team, and it's possible that they might have just sort of tuned it out by now. And certainly their defense isn't what it used to be as far as what he used to coach in Chicago. I mean, this has never been an elite defense, and so that's the other issue, that he's not getting that out of them either.
Absolutely. I mean, as someone who's from Chicago and, watched all the Bulls games in his tenure there, I mean, you see some of the schemes he's trying to employ, but, I mean, you definitely don't see the commitment to it or the consistent effort level across the roster.
Right. And you're just not going to win. I mean, they're the 27th ranked defense all year. That's not going to change suddenly, especially against the Rockets now. But I was impressed, though. They kept it close. This is, in theory, you think that they would get blown out with that kind of defense like that. So they did okay. But again, how long do you think this is going to last? How many games before the Rockets win the series?
I would call it a sweep. Harden just looked so locked in. They had absolutely no answer for him. I mean, they were even trying Derrick Rose on Harden, which is that could be a whole nother conversation.
Yeah.
But I mean, they were already that desperate in game 1. You know what I mean?
For sure. Well, Eli, thank you for coming on the show to break this stuff down. Anxious to keep our eyes on to see what's going on and how that happens. If you want to follow Eli, it is at Coach Horowitz 13. And he's got a lot of great information about the WNBA, too. I know it's a big hole in the content that people need to get filled, and you are there for that. So thanks for coming on. You'll have to come back on again.
Absolutely. Thank you.
You got it. And stay tuned, sports fans. We will be right back with our next segment on the B-Ball Breakdown. If you're listening to this and feeling a bit old and out of touch with this young generation of ball players, you might be in the age range where we commonly see sexual performance issues. Did you know that 40% of men by age 40 struggle from those dreaded 2 letters, ED? You know what they stand for. And now there's real science to turn your fortune completely around. 4hims.com is your solution. A complete one-stop shop for hair loss, skin care, and sexual wellness for men. They have well-known generic equivalents to the name brand prescriptions to help you combat ED. In fact, one pill, starting with a V, just came off its patent recently. A real game changer. So avoid those embarrassing doctor's visits with all the invasive questions. Instead, get erectile without the dysfunction. Go to 4hims.com/CoachNickED and get Hims for a month for just $5 while supplies last. This would cost hundreds if you went to the doctor or pharmacy. So don't wait. That's 4hims, FORHIMS.com/CoachNickED. See website for full details and get back on the path to sexual performance.
It's the B-Ball Breakdown with Coach Nick on SB Nation Radio. Coming to you live from the O'Reilly Auto Parts Studios, here's Coach Nick.
And we're back, sports fans. Excited to have you here on a Tuesday, Playoff Tuesday, where a lot of games are underway right now. It's been a really exciting time so far. We're only in day 4 of the playoffs, and yet it's already been a lot of different storylines. The Jazz haven't quite been doing what I thought they were going to do yet in that first game against OKC, but we'll see what happens with them tomorrow. And a lot of other intriguing storylines. Hope you're here with us with our first couple segments where we had a great discussion about a couple of the playoff series with the Warriors and then the Spurs and then also on the other side with the Houston Rockets and the Timberwolves. So I'm really excited right now, though, to bring on best friend of the breakdown, Tommy Tempesta, who we spend a lot of time interacting on Twitter, and everyone seems to get a big enjoy what we do together as we basically analyze the biomechanics of what's happening on the court with NBA players. And Tommy is the founder of Basketball Biomechanics. You can follow him at B Biomechanics, and it's a terrific follow. I highly recommend it because he has a lot of great information and for you as far as functional movement. He actually is the rare person that I know who can apply biomechanics with actual basketball-specific training. So enough of the intro. Tommy, thanks for coming on the show tonight.
Thanks for having me, Nick. I appreciate it.
It's great. You know, we interact so much on Twitter without actually speaking that it's weird to actually talk to you with voice.
Yeah. Well, I'm in New York now, about to get ready to do a court session, and we're still hovering around 50. So I'm pretty sure you're nice and cozy out there in L.A.
Yeah. I hate to make you feel any colder than you already are out here. As I sat outside eating my lunch and getting some rays, but it'll warm up pretty soon, I'm sure. By the way, I think the warmer weather gets everyone a little bit looser. They can start moving better. They're back and more flexible, right?
Absolutely. And with that warmer, a lot of outdoor hill training where we do movement things up and down the hill, and stair training and track training, and bring that back to the court, and also incorporate the beach for soft sand and stability. So the spring-summer is a really, really busy time for myself and my company, so I really enjoy it a lot.
For sure. And I think what I enjoy most about talking with you is to sort of dissect what's happening. And you'll see a player in the open court go up and sort of either, catch an edge of his shoe or not quite explode in the air. And you're on top of it to sort of explain what is going on with their mechanics and why it wasn't as optimal as it is. And I wonder if, when I travel around the country and I interact with a lot of coaches, it doesn't seem like a lot of the basketball coaches themselves have really any sense of what the functional movement of the body is supposed to be, or have any idea how to even teach that. Do you agree with that as well?
Yeah, I find that there's multiple roles that some may understand it in a specific organizational role, but then it's lost through just the fact that 4 or 5 people will cover certain things, and then they won't bridge that together for an athlete to then not have those issues on court. And for instance, the Derrick fast break, as you could say, layup attempt a little bit awry because it just looks like it's able to redirect some energy on that gathers. Now, could it be from the wind down of the season? Could it be from not doing certain things in the off season? Sure. But it should not, I feel like it should not be happening as much as it does in games where I'm kind of highlighting it for a reason. And, I do find that there's that gap, and that gap kind of needs to close for guys to still stay elastic and redirect energy and recoil energy even late into the playoffs and at the end of the season. So it's something to definitely speak on and try to figure out how we can move forward and progress that.
Yeah, and Derrick Rose is a great example because he's had multiple knee injuries on both knees and major surgery, and there's a lot of rehab involved, but then I think a lot of the issues with the NBA guys is they'll do their rehab, they start to feel good, and they stop doing it, and next thing you know, they're getting out of whack, they're getting sort of off balance, or they're not strengthening the way they need to, or the rehab itself might not even be as cutting edge as it needs to be, or as specific as it needs to be, because I feel like isn't part of the danger of quote-unquote rehab is that it's sort of a little cookie-cutter, and that people just going to do, everyone does the same exercises when it might not be the most optimal for them?
Yeah, I mean, there are those that there's definitely that demographic and those sectioning offs where, rehab, people think rehab is rehab, and then you're going to go to a performance trainer, and then that's where that lost in translation kind of thing, and there's no continuum. But I know there's plenty of highly educated professionals in the NBA as far as strength and conditioning guys and performance guys that do address said needs. But as we know, in the season, teams rarely practice, and they're doing more of a maintenance type protocol because they can't load players as much as they'd like. But the NBA has gone toward more of a recovery deload kind of progression and protocol for in season, and that's why we see some of these players completely lose plyometric nature of jumping and recoil towards the tail of the season, and then we'll notice definitely players that still have that bounce, so to speak, and some of those players are just because of genetically their tendon junctions where it meets the muscle might be more stiff and better off and be able to deal with all these games and minutes, and some players may need slightly more loading and maybe less playing time and kind of try to load and still keep and maintain certain parameters and not just let it fall off and then deteriorate, teams winning games. So,
absolutely. And don't forget, this is Coach Nick, and you're on the B-Ball Breakdown right now on SBNation Radio, and my guest today is Tommy Tempesta, who is the founder of Basketball Biomechanics, and you can follow him at bbiomechanics. And, another guy I wanted to talk about, I know we discuss him a lot, is Karl-Anthony Towns. And it's funny because I've seen him jump and get his, mid forearm up at the rim, and so he's got a lot of bounce. But I feel like you and I both have observed a lot of issues with his alignment, his knees, and the way they are aligned with the hips and the ankles. And I was wondering, can you give us some insight into what you're seeing there and why so much energy tends to be bleeding from that?
Yes, and we both really appreciate Kat for who he is and what he is. I just have somewhat of an issue with the body mass distribution. He's quite heavier, relatively speaking, up top, and it kind of tapers off to his hip and then knee, ankle, foot. And the first thing to contact and redirect everything from the ground up is your feet. And his feet need work. He needs to take those sneakers off, and he needs to deal with forces on some harder surfaces, not wood surfaces, but gymnastic type wrestling mat surfaces, and maybe some sand soft training, and even grassy hills where he has to deal with forces from the ground, and that would correct a lot at certain speeds, and it would help things go up his kinetic chain a bit better. And no matter how strong you get up top, it really doesn't matter if the foot, knee, and hip can't attenuate that force, because we've seen him get pushed, so to speak, a wedge to spaghetti, a cooked piece of spaghetti, where he's pushed at his shoulder, and he bends at the waist sideways because his foot and ankle really isn't doing much. So, that's something that we can definitely find maybe on another broadcast, but he definitely needs to redistribute some of that body mass and wake those feet up, because I definitely noticed they're a bit sleepy.
Absolutely. And it's funny because I think that's an overlooked area of the body for anybody who's training is the feet themselves. And I know, like, I'm doing Pilates a lot, and what I love about it is that we'll do, leg press on my back, but like on my heels, and then on the midfoot, and then on the balls of my foot, and constantly changing the position of the foot so that all of a sudden you are now, gaining a better strength and more balance, like in the base. It seems like that would be the most important part of any basketball player's ability.
Exactly. And you have to, what you're doing is you're increasing sensory input to certain areas of the and for argument's sake, after how old we are as a baby, we're already fitted for shoes. So, you have to think and digress the thought and, reverse engineer a bit and say, if sneakers were put on to protect the foot, that's great because you also lose some sensory input from the sole of the foot and from the ankle and the mobility of the ankle and how the foot intrinsic muscles work and how the toes grab the ground. And, it goes to show even from some track athletes that run, those spikes are very, very thin. They're not bulky, and they actually give you a very good awareness of your foot and ankle relative to the track surface. So, with that being said, I've done tons of work barefoot with Moses Brown, who's 7'2", and one of the reasons why he moves like a guard and moves fluidly is because one of the things I did the first time I met him was take him to a grassy hill, take his shoes off, and make him move and deal with forces and have to adjust to different external forces and maybe some band work up the hill, sideways, back, down the hill. Even with that weird hydro vest I have that has water in it, constantly perturb his sensory system to enable him to then move better on a basketball court. So, those are some novel ways that I do things and base my methods on.
For sure. And then there's no question when you share videos of your training methods, and people are they might scratch their heads at what they're looking at, but it seems clear that the ability to visually recognize the environment around you, and then also to adjust to how things will change, even if it's something that you're using externally, like on the beach, directly affects how they can then process that on a basketball court and be ready to accelerate or change their balance or change their position. It's a fascinating thing. And you definitely got to check out bballmechanics on Twitter because it's a really good learning experience. Tommy, thanks for joining us. We'll have to have you on again soon.
Pleasure, Nick. Appreciate it.
You got it. And stay tuned, sports fans. We'll be right back on the B-Ball Breakdown.
It's the B-Ball Breakdown with Coach Nick on SBNation Radio. Coming to you live from the O'Reilly Auto Parts Studios. Here's Coach Nick.
Hey, sports fans. Welcome back to the B-Ball Breakdown. Excited to have you here on this lovely Tuesday evening. As always, I am Coach Nick. Every Tuesday I'm here at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern for an hour with you to break down the NBA in every which way we can. Just had a great segment with my buddy Tommy Tempesta of bballmechanics. That's on Twitter. A really interesting discussion on the biomechanics of the players in the NBA and what holds them back or what makes them so good. You probably will watch the game differently from now on, now that you realize how important the feet are and how bleeding energy from the knees and the hips is a real thing. So we'll have to start looking at more of the playoffs now as we go forward. A lot of interesting storylines popping up here. And without any further ado, I'm going to bring on best friend of the breakdown, James Holas, who is a writer for bballbreakdown.com and just wrote a fantastic article about the Jazz and the OKC experience or playoff series. So definitely go check that out at B-Ball Breakdown. And he's also the co-host of the Dunk Tales podcast. So James, thanks for coming on the show tonight.
Hey, thanks for having me, Coach. I appreciate it. I'm always down to talk some basketball.
That's right. We're going to chop it up right now. So what are we going to talk about first? We were just discussing before the show. My mind is now blanking. We were going to talk about which series?
We can do, it's your pick. We can do the Celtics and Bucks. We can talk about the Heat and their surprise loss.
Okay, let's do all that. Let's talk about the Cavs for 1 second, can we?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, because I got into it over on Twitter with my buddy Mike Zavano, who is a Cavs freak and knows everything in sideways and backwards about them. But basically, that first quarter was a blowout for the Pacers, and the game, while it got a little bit tighter later on, and there was like that inexorable pursuit by the Cavs, it never really became that much in doubt. What are your thoughts here now that the Cavs are actually down and have now lost the home court advantage?
We talk a lot about how the Celtics brought back 4 players from last year's team. The Cavs are up there, right? It's basically LeBron and J.R. Smith and Kevin Love, and Tristan's not really playing. Doesn't seem like he's getting a lot of minutes. So they've had a complete roster overhaul too. And LeBron, he's playing awesome. Kevin Love is awesome, but there's a thing where sometimes teams can play too cool. And I think sometimes that's where the Cavs are. They weren't ready for the Pacers to come out and just sock them in the mouth, and it's easy to bounce back. We've questioned their defense all year, and everything came to rise. They just, Pacers got in transition and got anything they wanted when they picked up the pace. So, Victor Oladipo plays with a great pace and energy that he didn't show early in his career, and he's tough to stop. I don't think they have anyone on their roster who can really guard him. So they're going to have to throw bodies at him and hope everybody else, no one else can make plays again.
Yeah. I mean, I think I'd be really concerned if they had to play LeBron 44 minutes in a blowout, and they had to play him the first, I think, 14 straight minutes of the game just because the game had gotten so out of hand. They also had him, so not only are they playing him almost all the minutes, but they played him on Oladipo. They put him there to try and contain him early. It wasn't the worst thing, although Oladipo got him on one, just disrespectful ISO, backed him up, and then just went at him and pulled up for three. But that doesn't seem like, I just looks like LeBron was already winded early in the second quarter, and I just don't know how that's going to hold up through the rest of the series.
Yeah, there was a show on the TV show when they showed them, I think they were down 17, and LeBron just looked gassed. He was drenched in sweat, and the look on his face was already of exhaustion. And this comes to bear, sure. He's playing better than anybody his age with his kind of mileage has any right to play. But Father Time is still undefeated, and sure, LeBron's winning. He's still winning in the later rounds, but this is not 28-year-old LeBron. And they really missed Kyrie Irving. They replaced him with Isaiah Thomas. Isaiah Thomas didn't work out, so they replaced him with George Hill and Jordan Clarkson and Rodney Hood, which is all well and good. But sometimes you need another high-level player, just one individual guy who can kind of break defenses. And they don't have that other player beside LeBron James.
Yeah, and you know what's going to happen. Game 2 is going to start, and the Cavaliers are going to hammer them early, and everyone's going to go, oh, yeah, we remember these are the Cavs, they're going to win and stuff like that. So I kind of feel like that's sort of what's going to happen here, but it definitely feels like the Pacers have a lot to offer, and they've been a surprise team all year long, and they're deep, and they have a lot of guys that can contribute. And the question now is Bogdanovich, he fronted LeBron in the post, and they really had no answer to get the ball down low to him. And I think that's the other problem is that LeBron seems to have an issue with being able to either be aggressive with the ball and either create a shot or create a pass, or he'll simply just disengage and be like, I'm just going to stand here in the corner. So I had a shot in the breakdown I did of them. He was in the corner. He was so deep in the corner that you couldn't even see him. He literally blended in with the bench and just stood there, didn't move for almost the whole possession. And it's frustrating because he hasn't been able to find a balance between being aggressive and then letting the other players find their way.
Well, other than Jordan Clarkson though, and Rodney Hood and spurts, there's no one else on the team who really do that. J.R. Smith can every now and then come out of the weeds and hit a couple tough, ridiculous shots. Clarkson is going to come out and be aggressive looking to score. But, that's for 15, 20 minutes a night. Mm-hmm. And that's against second units. This is where, hey, you can only break down a roster so much and take away so much. And even this team is still they're still as susceptible to the disease of more as any other team. And they're aiming for a fourth straight finals. At the core is. So all this stuff takes a toll, minutes and just familiarity, breeds contempt, all this stuff kind of, hey, they made the big roster change right before the All-Star break, and there was a little surge, and they kind of fell right back into their old habits. So, I don't know. This is, I'm not saying it's the end of LeBron James and his time in Cleveland, and maybe Cleveland just, they right the ship in game 2, and they burn up the Pacers. But, that's not like a LeBron James team to be unprepared for the first game of the playoff.
Yeah, totally not. And yet, here's where they are. So keep your eye on that game 2. It's going to be a real interesting thing what happens because obviously they cannot afford to go down 2-0. So we'll see how that plays out. Let's move over to another playoff series here. How about the Celtics and the Bucks? We had a pretty spirited game, and right now they're in the middle of the game as we speak. So what are your thoughts on how that matchup is going to play out? And is this series going to be close?
So here's the thing about this series. I'm a Celtics fan, but, I try to put bias to the side. And I looked at it and said, hey, Milwaukee has the best player in the series. They probably have, between him and Middleton, him being Giannis and Middleton, they probably have 2 of the top 3 players in the series. And, they've been a playoff team before. I thought maybe Boston would finally depleted enough where Giannis would be the backbreaker. Well, maybe I underestimated Brad Stevens again, and it's all about the discipline. Celtics are so disciplined. Other than that one bad stretch in the second quarter when they just turned the ball over like it was fun, and that one stretch at the end of the game where they let the Bucks erase a 10-point lead and go to overtime. Celtics controlled the game, and let's see what kind of adjustments Prunty can make. And I don't know. Yeah, I've been told before, even by Bucks guys, hey, this team is just, they don't play very smart, and they didn't play very smart last game.
Right. And I mean, it was an epic game, I got to tell you, because it went right down on the wire in Middleton. They were up by 3 with half a second to go, and they let Middleton just sort of catch it and throw it up there. That was a little bit strange. But you can't say enough about Terry Rozier. I mean, that guy ended up with 23 points on a variety of really difficult shots. Not that we're going to forget about Kyrie at all, but certainly you get that kind of production, I'm sure Brad Stevens is ecstatic.
After that slow start, Rozier didn't start the game well at all, and he finished very strong. You got to give so much credit to the Celtics' development and even their drafting, because I wasn't happy with the Rozier pick when they initially picked him, and he's turned into a heck of a player. But yeah, so many guys stepped up for Boston, and Stevens played a heck of a game as far as rotations, getting guys in position. And that team's really in tune with each other. Like, Al Horford really destroyed Giannis in the post, and then when they started setting double teams, the weak side guys knew, hey, if I cut to the hole right now, Al Horford's going to find me. And he got a good dunk for Brown, and he ended up getting a layup for Brown late in the game when the rubber meets the road. So this is it's quite a series, and if the Bucks don't make the proper adjustments, which they got to find a way to get Giannis the ball other than just having ISO and let him try to go at Al Horford, because Al did a great job of moving his feet. So yeah, I'm really curious to see what kind of counters the Bucks come with in Game 2. I
agree. I'm frustrated, and I've been frustrated all year for years now with the offense and how it just doesn't create space for Giannis to be able to try and attack. And whether it's Henson, who's kind of hanging around the post and his man gets in the way, even when they have shooters out there, for whatever reason, the way they balance the floor and execute their offense, it just seems like he's constantly running into a second or a third player without the ability to kind of attack on the catch and find the gaps. And so, and yet, besides all that, he still went for 35, and he went 13 for 16 from the line and had 7 assists and 13 boards. So the guy is still doing it, but you just can't help but think there's a little bit more they can get out of that, which would then lead to some more victories. I think that Jabari Parker is the guy that they absolutely have to have find a way to get him more shots.
Oh, here's the thing about Jabari Parker. He looks really good. He looks like one of those primetime scorers, and I thought the same thing. But I talked to a lot of Bucks guys who he's so bad defensively, and he showed it yesterday, last game against the Celtics. He's so bad defensively that people are wondering if they can even keep him on the floor. If he's not scoring, he's not hitting shots, and Horford and those guys so disciplined, they met him at the rim a couple of times, that he provided absolutely nothing. Chris Middleton was plus 11, and he played like 46 minutes. That means the Bucks were outscored by like 17 points in like the 5 minutes that Middleton didn't play. Mm-hmm. And I think Jabari is a large part of that. It's almost unheard of. So he didn't provide anything. Him and Eric Bledsoe have to be a lot better. Bledsoe has to be so much better in Game 2, because Bledsoe, they brought him in to be that third guy beside Milton and Giannis.
Oh, yes, and absolutely he looked like a guy playing in his – I don't know if it's his first playoff game. I guess he played with the Clippers in the playoffs, but he certainly looked like a guy who wasn't, used to that kind of intensity, which, by the way, isn't the worst thing, because in theory he's got it under his belt. He did find a little success in and out of the later in the game, that perhaps starting in Game 2 he'll have a little bit more of his feet on the ground. But, yeah, there's no question he looked like he had the yips a little bit, and they need that too. If they get a good game out of him, then we should be 1-1.
That's the thing. Later on in the game, he did seem to pick it up a little bit, and he was more aggressive. But like that last play with Terry Rozier was so indicative of maybe what we see with the Bucks when he tried to guess the play, and he thought he saw the action was going for Jaylen Brown, so he tried to jump the route, and he ended up getting completely burned. And that's one thing. But the fact that he just stood there and didn't try to rush out and contest the shot, the Bucks need another level of effort if they're going to have a chance in this series.
Yeah, I agree, because you never know what happens as you start to lunge, and the guy is aware of that as he's shooting and might throw him off, but it didn't really seem to matter. So, Let's move on to our another series as we wrap this up here. The Jazz and the Thunder. I had picked the Jazz. Who did you pick originally before the game, the series started?
I'm pretty sure I picked the Thunder in 6 or 7, just for the simple fact that, I know it sounds really hokey and kind of like, maybe it's too simplistic. But when you have the best player in the series, you have a really good chance of winning this series. I think offensively, OKC has the 2 best players. As good as Donovan Mitchell is, we saw that Paul George is on another level when he wants to be, and we know Russell Westbrook, when his mind is focused and he's ready, he's in attack mode, he's really dangerous. So I picked the Thunder in 6 or 7, and it all kind of worked out that way. I wrote that post for B-Ball Breakdown. Everyone go check it out. And I detail how great Donovan Mitchell has been for the offense as an offensive linchpin, and how great Rudy Gobert is as a defensive fulcrum. And their discipline is what it's going to be about against the Thunder's undisciplined talent. And that's what we saw play out in Game 1.
Well, we'll have to wait and see as we wrap up our segment. We have our words from our announcers to come up, but I can't thank enough for coming on, James, and breaking that down. I agree, 7 games, but I kind of feel like the Jazz might still pull it out, so we'll have to wait and see how that plays out. But thanks for coming on the show today, and stay tuned. We have one more segment coming up for you on the B-Ball Breakdown. I'm Coach Nick. Don't go anywhere.
It's the B-Ball Breakdown with Coach Nick on SBNation Radio. Coming to you live from the O'Reilly Auto Parts Studios, here's Coach Nick.
So there you have it, sports fans. I know you guys are all anxious to get back to the games and listen to what's happening between the Wizards and the Raptors and the Bucks and the Celtics. Both 2 series that should go somewhat deep. I'd imagine they both go 6 games at least. And then the nightcap we have is the Pelicans and the Blazers, which it should be another interesting series, because certainly the Blazers are going to want to hold home court and want to find out what happens. But you got to remember that subscribe to my YouTube channel, where we have all these sorts of coverage with videos explaining what's going on the court from a coach's perspective, my perspective. I use a lot of freeze frames and voiceover and slow-mo, and you really get a sense of what these adjustments are being made, because after all, in the playoffs, that's what these games are. Can you adjust from one quarter to the next? In halftime, are you able to see what's happening and then change your lineups like we've seen a lot of the coaches do so far to really good results? And that's the other name of the game. Can you readjust after that and figure out what's working and decide whether or not it's worth combating what the coach is doing, or stick with what you know? So it's got a lot of intriguing storylines. I'm going with the Jazz. I think they're going to win in 7 games, even though that might be a Game 7 away victory for them. I don't think it's as rare as it used to be. And that will be one series I'm going to keep my eye on. Certainly the OKC fans will not be happy with hearing that. The Minnesota and the Houston series is interesting, but I do feel like the Rockets just have too much for them. And then the Philly-Miami series is going to be another one of those interesting things that's playing out in an interesting way. It's 1-1 with the resurrection of Dwayne Wade, and we think that, I'm pretty sure the Warriors are going to sweep the Spurs, it feels like, and they're going to get some much needed rest while Steph Curry recuperates. And that leaves us in the West then with that's it. I guess we covered all of them. So that, in a nutshell, is how I feel the first round is going to play out. But don't forget, again, we're doing lots of stuff. I'm doing 2 videos a day. We're getting podcasts out, multiple podcasts a week. My bballbreakdown.com website is just chock full of fantastic analysis every day, all the time, over with our friends over Clutch Points. So make sure that you check out bballbreakdown.com. And don't forget, another thing is that we're here every Tuesday, and I have guests on that come on and offer their expert opinions, and I get to throw in some of my ideas as well. You don't want to miss that. So again, a great show. We had Tommy Tempesta on, who just broke down the biomechanics of movement and why certain guys like Derrick Rose might struggle, or even Karl-Anthony Towns could get better. Certainly on the defensive end will help. So don't miss all of our content all across the interwebs. You can follow me at B-Ball Breakdown. And don't forget, at B-Ball Breakdown, we're not a channel, we're a conversation. You win,